What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is iRate Reviews, the show where I go over a comic book, its story, its art, give you my impressions, and let you know whether it's something to go back to the shop for or not. What we're going to be talking about right now is Batman issue number 15. So Batman number 15 continues the Rooftops storyline, which is primarily an arc that focuses on Batman and Catwoman, or more specifically the relationship between Bruce Wayne, Selina Kyle, and their alter egos and how those things kind of play out. In last issue, what we saw is a little bit more of a kind of roundabout the town situation where Bruce and Selina go around beating up bad guys and then stealing things that Selina's already stolen. But when we dive into issue number 15, what we actually see is the two lovers, well, where they should be after the conclusion of last issue, and getting ready to kind of take back the morning simply because dawn is on the doorstep. And as they kind of get their costumes back together, we see that Selina has already got a plan. She is already planning on bolting and immediately dives off the rooftop, quickly followed by Batman, but unfortunately Catwoman's nowhere to be seen. At this point in time, he kind of goes on a scavenger hunt around Gotham. He immediately calls up Alfred so that way he can do some research into the history of Holly Robinson and Holly Robinson's character. He also makes his way over to Jim Gordon, who's actually it's a really kind of funny scene because he's in his bathroom, he's getting ready to go to work, he realizes that he smokes too much and that he doesn't get enough sleep, but immediately then you just see Batman pop up in the corner and Jim is startled and almost scares the shit out of him, which is awesome. So they have their conversation. He's looking to get some records unsealed for Holly Robinson, aka, and this Catherine character that's kind of made an appearance. So Jim, calls up one of his detectives, has him go over to the local bar where the local judge is probably face down after drinking himself all night, and then he goes to unseal the records. And as Batman finds these resources, we ultimately end up at Catherine's place, where he goes through the different reasons as to why he needs to get in touch with Catwoman. And she kind of feigns a little bit of ignorance up until the point in time. It's just like, hey, I know that you're Holly Robinson, and I need to get in touch with her, so please help me out. She's the woman that I love. I gotta go get her. And she reaches in for what you'd only imagine would be a cell phone and immediately slices Batman across the throat, in some sort of susceptible area under his bat armor. And as he kind of sits there and bleeds, you're like, wow, Batman got ambushed. Is he making really bad decisions because of Selina Kyle? That's the only thing you can really think about. So as he kind of picks himself up, he gets himself together, he goes out onto the local, fire escape and goes to leap onto the next roof, but the strength that he had has left him. He's lost a little bit too much blood and ultimately starts plummeting down into the city streets until we actually see a familiar whip come around, grab him by the arm, and pull him back up onto the roof, where Selina kind of holds him before bringing him back to Wayne Manor and administering the necessary first aid to keep him from losing himself that night. And what we see at that point in time is a little bit more backstory between Selina Kyle and Holly Robinson. They were kids, that grew up together in this orphanage, and as things kind of grew up and as things progressed, as she left the orphanage, Holly actually got trained by Selina. So Selina taught her everything that she knew from martial arts and all kind of stuff and, burglary and all that. And what we find is that Holly, being a relatively unstable individual, once the orphanage was burned down and she lost that kind of connection, she's the person that went on the 237-person crime spree, killing all of those people. So Selina's taking a rap for one of the only friends that she had as a child growing up, which is noble but kind of dumb at the same time. But then again, you do silly things for the people that you care about. So when we finally get out of this, we actually see, Batman going into the Batcave and, he's ready to go back out on patrol. But it's one of those situations where there's a really important part that we missed. And the important part at the beginning was the conflicting origin stories of Bruce and Selina. So Batman remembers the situation where they were on a boat and, Selina Kyle was going to steal some diamonds. She was dressed up as an old woman wearing a mask, and he, solved the conflict. He solved the crime of what she was doing, pulled off the mask, and found her to be, stunningly beautiful. The memory that Selina has is much more from the Year One storyline around the Batman 400s, the original Year One. And what that is that Batman, as a kind of dressed up as a drifter, with a scar across his face, real dirty kind of person, goes in and protects Holly from this pimp that they were kind of working for. And this is one of those situations where they both find these interactions, beautiful, but for very different reasons. And you have to wonder at that point in time, is the DC continuity kind of messing with their memories? Is DC Rebirth having an impact on these individual characters and how they remember certain events? Because Batman's origin story for Selina is much earlier in Batman's career than Selina's origin story for how she met Bruce and how those things came to be. So it's really interesting to see exactly what's going on in that respect. Is it simply because Batman didn't realize that Selina was watching? Or is it because they're pulled from two different parts of the DC timeline? So that's a really interesting concept. The other thing that I kind of want to talk about is the fact that Batman at this point in time doesn't really have any abilities to track down Holly. Well, he can go track down Holly because he's a detective. He can go track her down, but there's no real way to prove that she killed those 237 people. So as Selina's out there on the rooftops waiting for her Batman, it's just one of those situations where he has no ability to kind of remove this charge from her. And it's going to be kind of frustrating at that point in time, but it's definitely something that I feel like they're going to be tackling in a much later issue, because there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the next few. As for the art, I really like Mitch Gerads' portrayal of the characters, and it really kind of complemented. Again, it was one of those situations where I really liked the color palette, a lot of dark, cool blues and grays and blacks, and it really conveyed the nighttime scenario of this. And then it immediately just burst into vibrance when we were talking about Batman diving off the top of the roof, heading after Selina. And there's just a whole bunch of different contrasting areas that he goes to, so it's a much different version of a book than it was last issue. So Batman number 15 was another really solid issue. I didn't necessarily think that it was as good as the previous issue, but it's still not bad. I mean, there hasn't been really any bad issues for me in terms of the Batman books from Tom King. And what I really see is that this one provides a lot of answers in the, who actually killed those 237 people, versus the actual questions that it brings up about DC continuity, people's different memories where they're plucked possibly from the timeline, and those things, as well as how to prove Selina's innocence to create a situation where she's not necessarily a fugitive from the law. So Batman number 15 is definitely a book that I would recommend going out and grabbing, simply to complete the Rooftop storyline and for the intrigue that it kind of brings me. It's one of those situations where Batman is a book that you've kind of got to pick up, and I am really on board with this. I really like where Tom King's going, and I feel like this is a much bigger plan that's going to be playing out over time. So that's my review of Batman number 15, but I want to know what you guys thought, so hit me up in the comments down below and we can start that conversation and dig into those things. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe right there to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.